Hey guys, this is David with HMAR Mobile Tech here in Sacramento with another video. Today I'm working on a 2003 Honda Accord 3-liter non-super low emissions vehicle. What I'm doing today is I'm changing the spark plugs, all 6 of them. And there's going to be more to this car, meaning I'm going to put out more videos related to the repairs I need on this vehicle, because this isn't all that it's going to get. It's going to need a new alternator, and it's going to need new valve cover gaskets. It's severely leaking down here on the this part of the exhaust manifold here up in the front, and it's leaking in the back. It's just the valve cover gaskets are leaking on the alternator, so the alternator needs to be changed as well. So in this video, I'm going to start with just some basics here. This is a diagram I pulled from Mitchell, and I just drew a picture of it here. I like to do things this way. And the more prepared you are when you do repairs, the better the repair will go, and you'll have less questions, and it will just go quicker. So for demonstration purposes, I put down all this information here, and then I've already started numbering my coils. In a lot of my videos, actually one of my videos I did this to show that I replaced the coil. It's just kind of good visual representation that you replace a part, and then also for the customer, and then also for your own knowledge if you're ever trying to troubleshoot a specific cylinder misfire. And just keeps things organized and neat. This is just what I like to do. Bank 1 is in the rear. Cylinder number 1 is always where bank 1 is. Bank 2 is in the front. So this is a 6-cylinder engine, so there's 2 banks. So bank 1 and bank 2. And what I already started doing is I started taking apart a few of the things back here that were in my way that looked like I would break just by moving my arm against it to get back here to the coil. So disconnect things before you go ahead and get started. The first thing you want to do is disconnect to the negative side of the battery. Anytime you do any type of a repair on a vehicle, especially the type of work that I'm going to be doing on it, I need to have it disconnected. I understand that if you were doing an oil change, you wouldn't need to do that. Or if you're replacing maybe a belt, you probably wouldn't need to do that. But get stuff out of your way. This is the bracket to the power steering pump here. Get that out of your way. Put the bolt back in there so you don't lose it. One thing is don't wait until you start doing work on cars to find out that you're a butterfinger dropping stuff when you're doing stuff that's critical, especially like this when I remove the intake manifold to do the valve covers, the valve cover gaskets, that you're a butterfinger because you don't want to be dropping stuff everywhere. So it's just something that I thought I'd say. So yeah, then I just removed this electrical connector here, and then I just disconnected this solenoid, this purge solenoid here, and just get it out of the way. And then basically you'll be able to get all of the 3 6mm Allen bolts that go in there out. And then once you're able to do that, then you'll just lift up on the coil and then pinch the connector. You'll see where you can pinch the connector, where you see my pointer finger here on my left hand. You'll pinch that and pull up at the same time. It'll make sense. So I'm only going to show how to do the spark plugs in the front of the engine, because it's going to be real difficult for me to show the backside. So the backside will be the same as the front side. The only difference is you'll just be fighting more things in the way, but you'll be able to get it if you just take your time and just remember that to go slow to go fast. If you want to go fast, take your time, do it right. Be methodical, get it done. Make sure you know your stuff before you get into it. Have all your tools ready and have your specifications and everything. And just, it just makes the repair much easier. All right, so for this particular engine, I did a little bit of research and found that it is possible that these are the original plugs that go in it. Originally, I was thinking they were a different style of NGK plug. These actually require this engine, according to Mitchell, the factory data says that that the specs on this are these plugs here for this 03 Honda Accord laser iridium. So I'm sure that everyone has heard this from other people. You cannot gap iridium plugs? Yes, you can if you use a feeler gauge. And in this case, the gap is 0.043 thousandths of an inch, so 43 thousandths of an inch. So you'll get a feeler gauge like this. Just get a regular feeler gauge. You want to make sure it's got enough of the little feeler gauge. I can't think of what you would call them, but the little slivers of metal in between. You want to make sure you have a good range of them. And so what you'll do is you'll take the two numbers that you can closely add together to get nearest your gap. So 0.022 and 0.021, you add those together and you get a gap of 43 thousandths of an inch. And then you will gently insert in between the tip that looks like a hook and in between the very tip of the center of the spark plug. And you need to be very, very gentle doing this process when you're trying to check your gap. And then you can just use a pair of slip joint pliers to grab the tip of the little hook tip and grab it, and be very, very careful as you're bending it, very, very gently, because you don't need to move it very much unless it was, you know, bent down real close to the tip or something, or dropped or whatever, but or it just came that way. So you know, just to verify that you have a good gap. And so you want to make sure before you bend anything, just make sure you're at your spec. And before you know, you might not need to bend it at all. So you'll just grab here, and then you'll just gently tip forward, and then you can push back by putting the pliers to the little hook tip of the spark plug, and then you'll push, and then you can bend it back a little bit if you get too far. So do it right. Don't use one of those little circular garbage gauges that you can get from the auto parts stores. This is the best way, is to use a feeler gauge. And then make sure you get your spec right. And and then on these here, I'll just use a very tiny bit of anti-seize here on the threads, just right here. I'm not going to glob it on. I'm not going to, you know, lather it all over it. I'm just going to put a thin layer of it on all the spark plugs. I didn't read anything from the factory data that says you can't, and I typically do unless it's a Ford or Mercury or Lincoln of some kind. I won't do it on those because they specifically say do not do that. So in this case, that's what I'm doing. That's what I will be doing, actually. And so at this stage here, I'm just prepping the plugs and getting the old plugs out. And then once I get all the old plugs out, I'll be ready to put these new plugs in, and you know, real gently thread them in, and I'll show me doing that, and then I'll set my torque wrench up, and I'll show you that to 13 foot-pounds, and we'll go from there. So a few things that I wanted to point out when removing your spark plugs, or any spark plug out of an aluminum cylinder head, which every vehicle you're going to run into that's from the 90s and up is going to be an aluminum cylinder head. What you're going to do is when you get your, for this specific vehicle, I'm just using a spark plug socket that is 5/8, and it's missing the rubber piece in it that'll actually hold the tip of the plug. So I just use a magnet, little magnet like this that slides in and out to retrieve the plugs once I get them loose. Do me a favor, you guys. Number one, if you're gonna use your battery to set tools on, use a container that you can put them in, because if you throw a wrench on here and it touches power and ground, you're gonna have a problem. You're gonna, you know, the battery could explode, you could damage it, you could cause all sorts of electrical problems. So keep a plastic container there, and keep your, you know, repair organized, and keep everything in that. That way it helps you know where your stuff is. You can't lose anything, and you just can't go wrong. So one thing I wanted to mention is that when I first started to remove these plugs, I heard a little kind of a metal creaking sound. I stopped right away, sprayed some PV Blaster, if you don't have PB Blaster, use any kind of WD-40 or any kind of lubricant is better than nothing at all. So spray just like for a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds down each hole. You know, once you get the ignition coils out, these are the ignition coils here. So once you get all the ignition coils out, and then you get your, you get your 3/8 drive and you get your 5/8 socket, spark plug socket in there, and then you just be real gentle as you're loosening them out. And if you hear that kind of creaky metal sound, I just do this anyway. I spray a little bit of PB Blaster or lubricant or WD-40 down these holes. If you think it's going to cause any type of flooding, or if you're worried about, getting it in there and you don't want it in there, then just spray a little bit of carburetor parts cleaner or brake parts cleaner down there, and it'll crank a little bit and hesitate when you first go to start it again, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. It's just burning off the residual of whatever is in the intake that you sprayed down in there, the lubricant or PB Blaster or whatever you sprayed in there. So, yeah, do yourself a favor. And then if you put a ratchet on there, a 3/8 drive ratchet, okay, this is the standard handle length here. And if you're pushing on it to loosen it to the left, to righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and if you're doing that and you are pushing on it really hard and you're not getting anywhere, you need to stop and think to yourself, why is it so hard to get out? And then don't force it, because if you break it, you're going to have a big problem. And you don't want broken threads in the cylinder head. It's a big problem. It costs more money, more time, and you're going to be screwed. So don't do that. Give it another shot at PB Blaster. Put seafoam in there, a little bit, like a half a tablespoon of seafoam in there. Put a little bit of a transmission fluid in there, like a very small amount of transmission fluid, and let it soak for a couple hours. Let it soak overnight. If you don't think you can get that spark plug out, don't force it out. You snap it in there, you're really screwed, and you're going to be up shit creek. So it's not going to be a good thing, and it's going to be a really, really bad day. So yeah, take my advice, do it that way. Use the plastic tray. It just helps keep things organized. If you tip it, nothing's really going to fall out, especially when you have stuff on top of the battery, because that's a real common place for people to put tools. So yeah, use your PB Blaster or WD-40 or lubricant, and make sure you just do it right, and you won't have any problems in this job. The spark plugs will come out like butter. Alright, so I've already done a couple of spark plugs off camera, but I'm just going to show you as a demonstration how to do it. What you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that you find a piece of rubber hose that's a couple inches long that will fit on the tip of the spark plug, and what that's going to do is it's going to help you easily put the spark plug down the tube and reach it in there to where you can gently turn it, so that you can get it in without pushing too hard on it and maybe cross-threading it and doing damage. So this is the way that you can do it, and I just do this all the time. So I've already done these two cylinders here in the front, so I've just left this one here. So I'm just going to put it in and just let it in real slow, and then you just kind of push in a little bit. You want to be gentle, and you'll start to feel it thread in, and then you can pull back on it a little bit like this, real gently, to make sure that you got the thread started. As long as it continues to turn easy, every single quarter of a turn or half a turn, you know that it's not cross-threaded. It's got to turn very, very easy with your fingers. Okay? If it starts to get tight right away, then that means you've cross-threaded it, and just stop and immediately back it off and try it again, because maybe you didn't get it in right. So what I've noticed about spark plug threads is it's kind of hard to get it wrong, because the threads are so close together, and I believe that's what makes it the TPI, the threads per inch. It just makes it easier. They just kind of find themselves in center, and they just go in easily. So once you get to where it stops, you just pull the hose out. Okay, and then, so I've got my 3/8 drive ratchet, and I've got an extension, and I got my socket. What I forgot to say is that 5/8 converts into 16 millimeters. So this spark plug socket here, you can get either 5/8 or 16 millimeter. So then what I do is I just put it in real gently. You don't want to force it in. You just want to let it kind of fall into place until you feel it go around the hex, like a bolt of the socket, of the spark plug, and then you just start tightening it until you feel like you feel some pretty good resistance. And you don't want to turn it that much. You just turn it until it feels like it's starting to get really, really tight. So then I'll take this off, and then so I've got my torque wrench. It can be set to inch. Okay, so it's not foot pounds, it's inch pounds. So if you can see my conversion here, the 13 foot-pounds is the torque, and it's 156 inch-pounds, which 156 divided by 12 is going to be 13 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm going to do it to, and so and then just moving over here, and I've got it all set up and ready, and I've already got the spark plug in snug, and then I just go and I try to keep the extension in the socket center of the spark plug tube going through the valve cover, because you don't want to tip either way, because you could break the tip of the spark plug off. So I just keep turning real slow, keeping it centered with my other hand, and if you do it exactly how I'm showing you, is how you're going to do it for everything. Unless you're doing some big torque like on a lug nut or something, but for this little things with small torque like this is how you're going to do it. You don't need to, you could grab on the handle like this. I just go like this, especially when I'm doing something that's so delicate, and going into aluminum cylinder head, and just want to make sure I do it right and can feel everything as I go through the motions here. So you will hear your torque wrench make a click. And then I like to go again, and then again. And then what I'll do is I will start again and go from the front to the back. And the same thing you'll do for the back side. Once you've got all the spark plugs in and torqued, you do one at a time, then you'll just go and do it again. 1, 2, and 3. So you know that from the front all the way to the rear, all 3 of those spark plugs are all good and tight and torqued at specification. And then if you want to look in there, you can, and make sure everything looks good, nothing fell in. And then once you're ready to go, then you can go ahead and put your coils back in. And so I'll just demonstrate real quick that one coil here, to make sure I get my order right here. So it's going to be cylinder number 2. So I numbered all of my coils. So I got my number 2, and then I use silicone spray, heavy duty silicone spray, and then I'll just give it a little bit here. And inspect your coil. If it looks cracked or damaged, then you might want to get a new boot on it or replace the coil. So I just put a little bit of this in there, heavy duty silicone, and then I'll just stick it in just like that. And then I'll put the little 6mm headed set screw in there and get that tight. And the specification on this, I think, is probably going to be like 4 to 5 foot-pounds, which is very, very little. Or you could do inch-pounds. You could do somewhere between 60 and 80 inch-pounds. It's really not that much. So once you get all that in, then what I like to do is I use this Q&D electric connector cleaner, and I'll just spray a little bit on each coil connector, and I'll do the same thing for the back. And once I got this all tight, I'll go ahead and just plug it on, and I'll do the same for everything else. So you've seen this one, so you just repeat it again for all of the rest of the 5 remaining cylinders. In conclusion to this 2003 Honda Accord 3-liter spark plug job is gap your spark plugs properly, know how to use your torque wrench properly, use your phone, the best tool that you can have for working on cars. If you don't know the order of things or how something looked, or if you don't have a good memory, I lose track after like 15 to 20 steps or pieces off an engine. I lose track. So I got to take pictures too. Take pictures before you touch anything on the car. That way, when you go to put it all back together, it'll be as smooth as butter. So use your cell phone, use your brain, try to use logic and common sense, ask questions if you don't know. Go to YouTube. I have fixed hundreds of cars from watching other YouTubers who've made videos on working on cars that I don't know much about or just needed a little bit of information I just didn't have. That sometimes the information just isn't available from the factory service manual or from Mitchell or AllData or wherever you're going to look for any information. So I've run into snags. I've run into times where I'm questioning myself or questioning the job. If you don't think you can do the job and you don't have all the tools and you don't really know what you're doing, then just don't do it. That's the best thing, is just don't do it. Hire somebody who can do it properly. If you think you're in over your head, use the electronic parts cleaner, use the silicone spray, look for any other damage. Don't create more damage while doing repairs on cars by, like I was saying in the very beginning, disconnect things that are in your way. You have your camera, take pictures before you do that, and then you won't, at the end of the job, it'll go back, everything will go back together real easy, like butter. You'll like working on cars. You won't be banging your head against a wall trying to understand and figure out how you got into a certain situation. All you had to do was just, cover your bases and just do a few simple basic things that will help you out and just kind of guide you along and help your memory and just get you, go in the right direction. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And if you like my videos, please, leave a thumbs up, share, do whatever you got to do. If I'm helping people, you got my email address. If you look up on in the description or in the about the YouTuber section, you can find that I have an email address. You can send me any questions or any suggestions or anything like that. I'd love to hear them. You guys are awesome. Thanks for watching. This is another video from HMAR Mobile Tech. My name is David, owner of my business here in Sacramento. You guys are great. Thank you.